Hey, welcome to the podcast. My name is Aaron, and you're listening to episode number 2. I had the privilege to sit down with Adam. He's an awesome and talented dude here in Savannah, Georgia. They're creating some amazing films, and I wanted to just ask him, how did he get there creatively, shooting on a wedding day and after wedding day? So it gave us a lot of tips, and it was really inspiring. So I hope that you get inspired through this. So let's dive right in. The last time I saw you, and we were just talking about this, was about a year and a half, 2 years ago at a vendor meeting. But needless to say, thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited to just kind of get to talk through some of the things that you guys are doing. And yeah.
Yeah, it's good to be here, dude. It's good to see your face. It's been too long, but this is awesome, man. Thanks for the invite. I feel really honored that you asked me, and yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely. And Adam, you've done some I look at your films now, and they're incredible. I sit there and I'm just like, how did he do that? What was the mind process? What was the thought process of that shot, or all of that? And I think that's what we're going to get into, just a topic of what the mindset of your shooting style looks like.
Right.
And how did you arrive to that? Because you look at people and honestly, I can really compare you to Henry Martins. I don't know if you know who he is, but he the style that he's shooting in, I think it's very similar to what you're doing. And I appreciate that a lot. So talk about what does that look like? How did you guys arrive to your own shooting style and creative process and all of that?
Yeah. Oh, man. So I'll try to keep that. I mean, that's obviously a long journey for anybody. And you kind of can recap and try to figure out how you arrive to a certain style. And I think it's probably lots of ways to answer that question. But I think what we would say our style is now from a wedding film perspective is, I just always say, and our couples kind of communicate this language as well, is just we're an up-tempo editing style and shooting style, really. And a lot of our couples now come to us and they inquire with us with that kind of inquiry. We want this energy, we want this up-tempo feeling. And kind of, I guess they say and maybe they're we just don't want it slow. We don't want it to feel this sadness to it. And that's just what maybe couples think it is whenever the
right.
sentimental stuff comes out. That's the only way they know how to say it, I guess. But yeah, so they approach us from the inquiry that way. And so I guess how we reached really that up-tempo vibe is honestly being inspired by people like Henry Martin, who's just that kind of edgy, hard-hitting, editing, fast-paced. That dude inspires me all the time. I love looking at his work. There's some filmmakers called The Quell and the Dove. If you look them up, they have this, it's similar fast-paced, but it's more happy feeling, and it feels very fun and bright and airy. Not from a look standpoint, it just makes me feel that way, right? So I love looking at their work. And a lot of those type filmmakers in the wedding industry really just inspire you to try something new, and they give you permission to try something new. And so I'm just really thankful for all of those really awesome filmmakers who do that. And so, but really, long story short, 2017-ish, 18, a bride contacted us, and she had a really strong vision for what she wanted. And so the opportunity just fell in our lap. We had never shot or edited anything that was up tempo like that. And she knew what she wanted. She knew the way she wanted it to look, the way she wanted it to feel. And she even said, I don't know if y'all can do this, but can you try? And we were like, let's do it. So it literally fell in our laps. We created that film. And ever since that film, every single couple, I feel like they watch that film And then there's numerous ones after that now, but it was almost like identity crisis to an extent. Like they're like, I like watched your videos and then I love this and this. And then I watched this one and now I'm like, I think I
Wow.
want that. And
Yeah.
then we started to learn like, okay, you want that? Awesome. And we would do it. But then we realized, well, the day wasn't really that way. So now how do we create something that thought they wanted, but their day didn't really represent that.
Yeah.
So honestly, I guess to answer your question, because now I'm on a rabbit trail, but to answer your question, it really just fell in our lap and we developed a style because that's what a couple wanted. And we realized, wow, we loved doing that. And then we just started honing in on that style and how do we shoot to create this energy? How do we edit to create this energy? And then you just start building and building. And now, like 3 or 4 years later from that first up-tempo edit, it's kind of like we've coined ourselves as that's just kind of what we do. And that's what couples really approach us asking for most of the time. Yeah.
Wow. I love that. That's really good. And I think you hit on a point there where it's like, well, we'll transition into the next question, which would be, what do you do with a couple that wants that, but their whole day didn't look like that? Like, how do you approach that? What's the communication that you have with your couples when something like this happens?
So we try to, I can't remember back, like, what did we do because we had to learn, okay, we have to have conversations ahead of time because now couples are seeing this vibe, this fast paced editing vibe. And they want that. And then we go film and we realize, okay, this is kind of hard to do when the energy's not there. How do we talk about that ahead of time? And that's what we really started to do as quickly as we could learn that. We have, it really starts with the initial inquiry because when someone inquires with us, they're mentioning that in their inquiry most of the time because they've looked at your films, and so they'll mention something like that, which then in turn we have a phone call before we ever book. And then we talk about, the vibe of the video. Like, what did you see on our portfolio that you really were, you connected with and you were attracted to? Like, what felt like it's going to be your day? Or it felt like mostly like your personalities as a couple. And they'll start pointing out things. And then from just that one question, what did you connect with? What fits your personalities? We can kind of start to gather what they want. And if they're leaning to, if they point out films that are all up tempo, then we will, start to dig into their story a little and all of that stuff on the phone call. And if it sounds like the energy's already there, then we just go with it, right? But then we start to coach them through, like, okay, so we want this vibe. We let them know ahead of time the amount of content we have to capture to create this vibe is a lot. So we prepare them for that. Like, the camera is going to be right there with you all the time that day. Because we focus super heavy on the couple and super heavy on people the day of the wedding. Obviously we get details and we get tons of content, but we try to get a ton of that before our time starts with them, or even the next day or the day before. Like, if we need extra content, we go get it. But I let them know that camera is not going to be rolling on you the whole day, but we're going to be right there beside you. And so we just kind of mentally prepare them. And then we prepare them with, like, we have a list of like up tempo fun things that we can do. Not to manufacture anything that's not authentic. If we just mention things, and if they say, oh, that would be fun, and if they're like connecting with the thoughts that we have, then we know that, okay, they'll be willing to do this, whether it's popping champagne or, there's a moment where the whole bridal party is going to pop confetti cannons, and, or just whatever it might be. We'll create some of those moments, but then we let them know we just want to capture the energy that you'll have together, that you'll have with your guests. And then we'll kind of stir some of that up throughout the day, but we don't want to try to make something that it's not. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
it really starts with the initial inquiry. It really does.
I love that. No, and these are so like the questions that you guys are asking are so intentional. And then on top of that, like the shooting that you guys do, like I look at your films and I see like little things that you would never really see on other people's films. For example, like just a quick shot of, hey, here's a corner of this building, or like transition over to like the right or down. Like, guide me through that, because like
Right.
like our style is so different, and
Yeah.
but I appreciate all of that you guys do. But I would love to hear like the mentality. What is like what is going through your mind
Right.
when you're shooting these? Like it's like you're walking down, and you just said it, like you take a day before or a few hours before or whatever, or the day after. Like, A, when do you know that you need to do that? And B, what's the shooting process like creatively for you guys on the day of?
Right. So I think that ahead of time we will realize, but based off a timeline, we're just not going to have enough time logistically to shoot enough B-roll for an up-tempo edit if that's what they're after. And so we will just go into it thinking, okay, we have to, like, we possibly can a little before our time starts. But you know, when you arrive at a venue or you arrive where if the bride or groom are anywhere nearby, you just feel like you'll hear laughter, you'll hear something. You're like, gosh, I need to go over there. So that happens every time. I'm so like, I'm pulled towards the people because the people are only there for one day at that time gathered, right? So I'm like, this only happens once. All the B-roll can happen any other time. And I know that's like extra time allotted for that, but details that we focus on the day of is things that we can't ever get again. Like, you know, obviously there's like florals and there's a venue decorated. So like those establishing shots and all those things, obviously we don't focus a ton of attention towards it, but we do get it. And because those details we can't go back and get, right? We could get the venue later, but it wouldn't be decorated the same or what have you, or designed the same. So I think we know ahead of time, based off the logistics of the timeline, whether we're going to have to go ahead or after. And if it's in like the city that we live in, then we just pick a day where we know the weather was very similar, and we just go out and start shooting some B-roll, launch a drone, and just have a fun evening or a morning doing that. And so that when it's in our city, we get very heavily focused on, okay, it's all the people and it's the couple, and we're going to just focus all our energy towards that today and not worry about, I got to get a drone in the air, I got to get all of this B-roll. And so that makes it a little bit easier. But when we go out of town, we definitely arrive way early. And if we're staying overnight, then we just know the next day, we'll look at the weather ahead of time and make sure it's going to be similar, either the day before or after. And we just go and we just spend the evening just getting the B-roll that we need. Day of, like, and before, when we're shooting this B-roll for specifically up tempo, because we don't do every wedding film up tempo, but when we know we're going into it that way, like you were saying, there's some whip pans and there's different camera transitions, and a lot of that is just in camera. We just create those with the camera. So we'll go shoot B-roll specifically for a wedding that's up tempo, say here in Savannah, and we'll go look for fun looking things, colorful things, movement that we can capture, all of those things that feel like they have energy, and then just random stuff. Like there's a newspaper stand, like just do like a quick zoom in, zoom out and hold it. And then we know we'll just do something cool with that. And Andrea, she'll use a 70-200 for like tons of B-roll pretty much all the time. She shoots on that rig, and we've learned that it creates these really cool, because a Sony can zoom in like so smooth and zoom out so smooth. She'll just do like a quick zoom in, hold, zoom out, hold, whip pan up. And then it's just like, okay, we'll create something cool so we can reverse something and come back down to it. But what I've learned is I'll frame up something and then I'll just whip up, and then I'll frame it up again. I'll whip right, frame it up again, whip left, frame it up again, whip down. And I just know I can transition into that nice building or whatever random thing I'm filming, and I can reverse something if I want. But what I've learned is frame it up and whip. And when I reverse it, the original steady frame up is your ending shot or starting shot. It doesn't matter, because if there's no subject moving, you can't tell it's reversed. Does that make sense? That's just like a little editing trick.
Yeah, I love that.
It's if you try to come down and get into it, it'll create that little shake. If you want it steady, like steady your shot and that's your in frame, and then whip out and just reverse it in post. So that's kind of just a little trick.
Wow.
So anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, we think up tempo, we're going to capture B-roll that way. So most every single time I capture something, even if it's a perfectly steady shot, I'm going to whip away from it before I turn the camera off. And sometimes it's a slow, just like a slow down, slow up or whatever. And I can just speed ramp that little. So you just kind of cut, and where it's the camera starts to move, cut, speed ramp it, and it creates a quick out of it. So you don't have to technically go that fast. It just post edit
Right.
little tricks and stuff.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, and like these little like details that you guys do, like this is honestly like you'll catch me at a wedding moving from left to right, and that's about it, right?
Yeah.
Because again, like, but just getting to like hear what you guys are doing, like, is awesome. The focal lengths that you guys are using, like 70 to 200 for B-roll, like, who uses that, right?
Right.
You guys.
It's super,
But again,
it's
it
so
just,
beautiful.
yeah, and like you said, it creates like these awesome like different images and stuff like that. So yeah, and then with the editing that you guys are doing, man, like these little, I notice these things, like, and they're incredible because like you'll cut and then like zoom in and then zoom out on the next beat and then whip to the right or something. Like,
Yeah.
these are insane and I love it. But I think the biggest thing is just how you guys are bringing something fresh
Mm-hmm.
and new to the table. And honestly, it becomes one of these things where like people can grab inspirations from. Again, just like you're saying, you get inspired by people, and I think you guys are starting to create and mold something that people can become inspired by,
That's awesome.
creatively, and with a bunch of these little attention to details. Right? What happens with you guys? Say you're in backlog or something, because let's be honest, we all get into backlog.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like as far as like the film, with how much do you get creatively like pressured? How does what happens with you guys on that, like if you do have some kind of backlog,
Yeah.
and how
So
do you handle that?
I mean, that's happening today because we're coming out of a wedding weekend where we filmed, and now it's back to some editing, and it's starting fresh on an edit. A lot of it's already been cold and favorited, and there's been a ton of work done to this project already that normally we have like a two-step. Andrea's doing a ton to it, multicamming tons of stuff, going through narrative, really gathering the footage into like, this is the best content we have from this. And so we can just kind of view that only. And so now today starts where we're kind of just going through. And so now I'm kind of getting my eyes on it and deciding where's the starting point. So, and it feels, that always feels like a battle. So, and it's never not been that way. I think when you come out of editing something, especially, and you're just really proud of it, you're like, man, that was so, this like the energy you get from releasing something and knowing that the couple loved it, but you're proud of it too, you know?
Right.
And then as soon as you get done with that, with a backlog, it's like, all right, shift my brain into the next one, you know? And I think that's just really, I think it does something emotionally to us. It just does. It's like a little bit of a roller coaster emotionally. It's a little bit of
Right.
a roller coaster of like, how do I focus now? You know, because I'm actually still thinking about what we just created and what we just captured.
For
And
sure.
today's been that grind, and we have to push each other. You know, because Andrea, the project I'm currently opening, she's already done a ton of work too, and so it's like mentally we have to. I don't know. I have to get into it, and then she's like, "Well,
Right.
the story's there, the content's there. Like, look, I love this. We love this. We love this." So it's kind of that like pushing each other back and forth just to really like, okay, let's go after it and let's make something great. So yeah, I think we're in that right now. And so what I try to do is just go, no, I'm not going to just do something to be doing it. I really want to make this great. Yeah. So I don't force through anything. What we'll do is just start. I think creativity comes out as you start. And B, I'm just willing to like make something and then just botch it and just say, no, we're just going to start from scratch again. But most of the time that doesn't happen. Like even if I just start throwing things together, like, and it's most of the time narrative, I'll just start throwing narrative on the timeline and just like, what goes together? If it's up tempo, like what's an energetic thing to start narrative of this film? And most of the time, if I will get away from listening to music tracks, I'll get away from looking at clips and I'll just listen to what everyone said the day of, or the weekend for that wedding, then the narrative will actually give me the energy to be like, oh, well, that's the perfect thing to start. You know, once you have the first thing on the timeline, and especially for me, once someone says something that's like meaningful or says something that has some energy to it that fits the vibe of the entire wedding film, that's normally like, okay, I have somewhere to begin. And then I pick music. We may have already picked the music, but then I really focus on music. Like now what fits this? Because this narrative is kind of going to like propel this edit. And that could, I mean, it can even, and there's a film that one of the favorite starting points of any film that we've done. Well, there's two. One's a really old one, but as far as up tempo, because that's what we're kind of talking about, is I was riding in the car with a couple and I just spun around, and luckily I had a 24-70 on the camera. I was just handheld jumping in with this because I was like so close to them. And they had literally, the ceremony had just happened. They hopped in, and luckily I was able to go in the car with them. And I was like, how long have you been married? And I don't even know why I asked that. And they were like, it was only like an hour or something. But it was a little less than an hour. It was something like, but he did it down. He was like 1 hour, 30 minutes and 29 seconds or something. And she was like, we're setting records here. And that just naturally came out. And in the edit, literally in that moment, I was like, that's starting the edit. So then the rest of the day filming, I was like, I got to make this like super hype, which they really wanted that anyways. But that's one of my favorite starts to a film because it's so genuine, it's so in the moment, and it has so much energy to it. And it was so candid, and I just love that stuff. So literally that one just did it for us. But that's kind of some of the stuff we're looking for a lot of times is like, is someone going to say something? More than likely that's going to happen really fast, or else intro that way, you know? So I would just encourage, look for narrative, quit listening to music, quit doing all that stuff. Just listen to what everyone said, and something will pop out to you and be like, that starts the film. And then you'll just be able to start easier. Way easier said than done. I'm currently today, I was like kicking myself like, okay, just listen to narrative. And it's, you know, it's easier said than done for sure.
Yeah, no. And I think that's awesome. How do you guys create room for authentic like narrative to happen, especially for like the bride and the groom? For example, if you're in the getting ready like with the bride and the bridesmaids, like it's obviously getting to know your couple beforehand and like, you know, like chatting with them, meeting with them and stuff like that makes it a little bit better. But what are some things that you guys are doing with the bridesmaids, for example? We don't necessarily get to meet face to face with bridesmaids very often, or groomsmen. Like, how do you guys approach that to create some authentic narrative?
Yeah. Just be willing to like be a little awkward to an extent, because sometimes I'll be just, you know, you kind of got to gauge the room first. But then you look for the moments where it's like, these two ladies are just like, or these two guys are just chilling over here. Be like, hey, you like, how you guys feeling right now? And normally they'll be like, what? Like, it's great. You know, it's Max's wedding day today. Like something will happen, you know? Or hey, got anything you want to say to the couple, you know? And always use their names, because then they'll repeat their names, you know? So that usually helps. But I guess it's just being willing to ask questions and not necessarily have to be sitting in a perfect interview, you know, type of situation. Because I think we always think we got to have the perfect light. We got to have the perfect quiet room. But if you have a good shotgun mic, you can capture spontaneous narrative all day long. You just got to be willing to, and not be annoying with it, but like be willing to just like find the perfect moment where maybe there's already some energy going. And then it's like, hey, like, do you want to say something to the couple, or like any words you got to say, or how do you feel right now? Like, because most of the bridesmaids are emotional, or sometimes they're like, they're like looking at the bride almost being done with makeup. And it's like, if you hear that emotion, or you hear them like, oh my gosh, like look at her, turn and be like, capture that. Cause then they might look at the camera and you're like, how do you feel right now? Like, how amazing does she look? And they're like, oh my gosh, how is this? They'll just say something. I don't know. And then to the bride and groom, like I'll ask the bride, and we pre-warn them of this. I'll say like in the initial phone calls, like, hey, are you cool with us, just spontaneously asking things? Like you might be walking to the first look, like, hey, where are we going? What are we doing? One of my favorite moments in a film was it was Sophia and Aaron, a recent film we did, and she was getting on the elevator. It was the worst lighting ever. I mean, I knew it was. I was like, this is not ideal, but I could tell like she was like nervous and excited. And I was like, Sophia, where are we going? And she's like, we're going to go see Aaron. And the way she said it was just like, ah. And then Andrea was also asking him, how do you feel right now? She's coming down. And he's like, I think I'm going to cry. So now we weave those moments together, and it was literally in real time. I was asking her, not knowing Andrea was asking him. And just because we do spontaneously ask things off camera, and he had a mic on, so it was like perfect for him. I was capturing her with a shotgun mic, but just being willing to think like, what's something I can ask, and it might only be 3 times out of the whole day that you just asked a spontaneous question. Like, how long have you been married? Or how do you feel you're married? And they might just shout something to you. Or where are we going? How do you feel about that? As they're walking, because they're already walking and they're like, I don't know how to feel right now. This day's all about me, and I'm going to see my groom, or I'm going to see my bride. And, like they're going to say something that's just so real, I guess, in that moment. Or they might not say anything at all, and that's okay.
No, I love that. And and I think from what I'm hearing from you guys, is like, just become approachable. And
there you go. Exactly.
Be ready to just ask like little questions. They don't have to be, I think we get so caught up with the bigger questions, like how can I get some like deep answers for this? And it's like, no, just ask the small questions, and I think you'll get some really authentic, real answers from that.
Yeah, exactly.
So dude, all of this, I could go on and on, like asking you guys questions on all of this. Like we could unpack so much of it. But if you had the opportunity, and this was one of our questions, to go back to when you guys were first starting out, or to anyone who's starting out, like what would you say to them in order to find their style? Like what are some things that you wish you could have done earlier in the process of becoming who you guys are now?
Right. I wish, let me try to think of exactly how. Yeah, I wish I had of done more communication ahead of the wedding and in the initial inquiry. Just when I was first starting out, maybe, you kind of just need to do whatever you can to shoot and get a portfolio going. But real quick, as quick as you can, start, I could have communicated with the couples more, even when we just needed to shoot anything, as much content as we could and as many weddings as we could, just to get a portfolio. But communication would have helped me develop the style quicker, probably, because we would have realized, oh, these people have this couple has a lot of energy. Like, I wonder if we could do one of those Henry Martin style edits, or like something we've already seen and got inspired by. And it's like, man, I'll never be able to do that. Like, that's just like so cool. But our couples don't want that. And like when we first were at weddings, we were kind of just a fly on the wall. Like we thought that's what you had to do, like not really be in the way and just capture the things that are unfolding. And while that's still true, to an extent in certain moments, but now we are just kind of like a part of the celebration and a part of the party and a part of what everyone's doing throughout the day, so that we can just be like, yeah, like what's going on, and not worry if the audio is perfect or anything, or even if I'm hearing my voice, because it doesn't really matter, But so I guess communication ahead of time is what I wish I had done quicker, and I think we would have developed our style even quicker. I mean, everything's in good timing, but I think we would have realized we had opportunities that we could have took advantage of if we hadn't done that. So yeah, I would just do that quicker. I would have phone calls, and I would have not too many. We just require two, one when you first inquire, and then one within like 30 days of the wedding. And we really don't talk a ton of logistics. We just really talk like video vibe and all the things we can do to create that vibe, and how we'll go about capturing the vibe that they want. And if they want a more sentimental storytelling type edit, which I love too, then we will dig into the narrative even deeper and dig into like personal vows or letters, and then how can we do that that's not just the typical way, or we'll do it the typical way. That if there is quote unquote a typical way to do anything, I don't think there's any rules around it,
Right.
And that is the kind of language we use with the couple too, is like, there's no rules around the way you read a letter to each other. Do you want to do it? Tell me how you envision it. I just had a conversation with a bride today that her wedding's in a couple of weeks, and we had that exact conversation. She wants up tempo, but she does want that little bit of sentimental thrown in, which is a kind of a tricky thing to do. But so we kind of talked that through, and we had like an hour-long conversation just about video vibe, because I know what she wants, and we have to really talk about it ahead of time to let her know how we have, the content we have to capture and the type of vibe that we have to capture to create that,
Yeah.
So
No, I love that. And I love seeing you guys like become inspired by people, but not necessarily copying other people.
Right.
At that point, you guys have created your own style. You've created your own way of storytelling. And it's just been phenomenal to watch, like over the last couple of years. Like it's just been incredible. I'm definitely inspired by you guys, but what you guys are doing.
Same to you, dude.
And I think it's awesome. So yeah, man, thank you again. Really, I appreciate you sitting here with me and taking the time to just, record this podcast, kind of pick your brain a little bit on how you guys are doing it. And I cannot wait to see everything that you guys are going to bring to the table moving forward, from this point on. And if you guys are listening or watching, make sure you go follow Adam and Andrea. They're at Square City Productions on Instagram. It's just at Square City Productions, right?
Yep.
Yeah, follow them. They're incredible people, super talented, and I love their heart just to like help. So if you guys have any questions, like reach out to him. They're awesome. So I think this is where we're gonna wrap up the podcast. Man, again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, dude.
And if you guys are not in the Facebook group, go ahead and join. It's Through the Lens of a Wedding Storyteller wedding group. This is so new to me. I still got to think about it, but until then, we will see you guys, or, talk to you guys on the next one.